I know we're still waiting for some people, and hopefully they get in soon, but I'm going to go ahead and bring the Bay Area Hospital District Board meeting to order. And tonight, we have public input scheduled on the first item agenda, but I'm going to change things up just a little bit. I get to do something that's fun to do. Can you hear me all without the microphone, or do I need the microphone? I'm okay. So, on occasion, we get to do something that's really nice. Occasion, we get to celebrate somebody who's given decades of their life in the service of others, in the community, professionally, and in this specific instance, on the board. This person has meant more to me than I think they're aware, just by her presence. She was never the loudest, but when she said something, it had merit, and it had meaning, and it had insight and thought. And so it caused you to stop and listen. And that's not a characteristic everyone has. So it has been my honor and privilege to have served the short time I did with this person on the board. And with this time, I would like to bring Dr. Donna Rabin up here to celebrate her and thank her for her years of service on the board. One month. 2013, 2023. Sincerely, thank you for everything you've done for the hospital and for the community. It means a lot. Here. Would you like to say anything?
I hate public speaking.
Okay.
I would just like to say thank you for this kind gesture, and thank you for all your hard work. And that includes everybody in the room.
Yes, thank you. Taking another minute, we have a couple board members here who really have an insight and worked with her. Barb or Tom, would you guys like to just say just a couple things to add to that?
I'll speak first because when I recruited Donna, let's have coffee and somehow I engaged Donna.
You told me it was just a couple of hours a month.
It's truly, I have been very, very grateful for your insights, your just amazing spirit, and I do miss seeing you on a regular basis.
We joined the board the same time.
We did.
I was thinking it was 2009, but detail. But anyway, I so appreciated just your knowledge of the healthcare community, the knowledge of people in the community, and you just always knew the right thing to say to bring us if we were starting to wander off track or something. And I really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, we're going to return to our regularly scheduled meeting. We're going to do public comments now. We're going to formalize this a little bit. We've got the notice up on the board. We have people sign in and register. I have the list here. I'll call your name. We'll ask you to come. I hate talking the back of my head, so I'm going to acknowledge you, have you come up, go to the podium, state your name. You got 3 minutes. Who's our timekeeper? Shannon's going to be our timekeeper. She'll typically let you know when you got a minute left. I'm not going to read that. I'll let you guys read that. Love to hear what everyone has to say. I usually have a phrase that I read out that's, like, keep it cordial, keep it, professional. But aside from that, we're interested in your contributions to what's going on. So with that, I'm going to start. The first person I have is Tracy Sweely. There is, yes. And I believe it's on. Yes. Well,
Tracy Sweely, Coos Bay. From our time attending the finance and board meetings since mid-2023, Judy Moody and I composed a summary of what we have seen unfold regarding the hospital's financial condition. On December 20th, 2024, I sent this document to Denise Bowers for distribution to the board members. She indicated that Brian Moore, as liaison to the board, would do so. At this time, I would like to submit the document here as public comment. Is the electronic file sent previously sufficient, or do you want a hard copy?
Previously.
Okay. Regarding the negotiations for the proposed merger with Quorum Health, I understand that as a condition of Quorum's participation, they are requiring the AH to liquidate its entire investment portfolio and use said funds to pay off its current debt. Liquidating the entire portfolio would seriously undermine any leverage the hospital has going forward and is inadvisable. On another note, is Bay Area Hospital's legal counsel versed in the extractive strategies of private equity companies, and can they advise on positions that effectively counter such strategies? Among other things, the board should stipulate that Quorum Health be prohibited from using the hospital to acquire any new debt that is not expressly for operations or capital improvements, and bar the use of such proceeds to pay shareholder dividends. Also, if Quorum is requiring a management service agreement, the board should stipulate a cap on management fees. Finally, the board should require Quorum to deposit in escrow an amount that would ensure the hospital will remain open should Quorum exit the partnership. It is my understanding that the Oregon Health Authority's healthcare market oversight program will ultimately need to approve this partnership, and that they accept public comment on their healthcare market oversight transactions and reviews page at any time prior to and during their review process. I encourage concerned members of the community to submit comments there or at www.savebayareahospital.org. That's a .org. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Judy Moody.
Judy Moody, Coos Bay. I'm feeling anxious and concerned at the state of my hospital. On the hospital's website, 2 core values stand out for me. Ownership. We take personal responsibility for all aspects of organizational success. We take personal responsibility. And innovation. We continuously look for opportunities to improve our organization. Over the past several years, ownership and innovation were somehow lost. In the business world that I'm familiar with, in situations like this, heads would roll. In most businesses, the CEO would have been fired. Yes, the buck stops with you, Mr. Moore. That isn't happening here. Not you, Mr. Moore. You have already negotiated your continued employment with Quorum Health. No one ever publicly took responsibility for the financial failure of this hospital. You, Mr. Moore, and the board of directors all pointed fingers out to the pandemic, the payer mix, the epic billing catastrophe. You presented yourself as victims. You never once apologized to the community or your employees for this failure, not even at the December 10th board meeting. Mr. Cribbins just lambasted the employees with history of the situation, much that they had never been privy to, and stated that the board had lost sleep over this. That's your job. There is no apology and no humility. Innovation. Did you ever reach out to your community? No, you withheld vital and critical information about the financial failings until you were forced to face the camera and the newspaper's questions. In one of your finance meetings, Dr. McAndrew asked, when are we going to tell the public? As a board member, the statement might have been, we have to share this information as soon as possible with the public. They deserve to know now. Isn't the board the boss here? Innovation. Have you ever reached out to the Kaisers, the Bandon Dunes Foundation? Not a grant. I'm not talking about a grant. They recently gave a transformative gift to Southern Coos Hospital and Health Center. And as noted in the World, the hospital and its foundation have benefited for years from the Kaisers and the Bandon Dunes Charitable Foundation. I'm talking about a face-to-face meeting with them to develop a relationship that should have been done years ago. I'm anxious and concerned about my hospital and if it will be here and able to provide the services we all need as we age. I am frustrated with the lack of accountability from Mr. Moore and the board of directors as they move into the agreement with this less than stellar entity.
Fine.
Thank you. I'm going to change it up just a little bit so we have somebody kind of on deck. So the next speaker I have is Terry Whitty, and then John Whitty is after that. So Terry, if you want to come up, and John, if you want to be, in the ready.
Hi, my name is Terry Whitty. I'm from Coos Bay, born and raised here. And we cannot ask questions, but I do wonder why. And then the second thing is, I'm not going to pick on any board members or you, Brian, because I know you're all good people. But I am going to pick on this entity that you are looking at belonging to. And I'm going to read this. There has been so much negative information about private equity. And this is from U.S. Senate committee investigating. As our investigation revealed, these financial entities are putting their own profits over patients, leading to health and safety violations, chronic understaffing, and hospital closures, White House said. In September, another Senate committee took the extraordinary step of voting to hold Ralph Vittori, CEO of Stewart Healthcare, in contempt of Congress because he and private equity investors extracted hundreds of millions of dollars from the company prior to declaring bankruptcy last May. And it,
1 minute.
okay, it makes me so sad to think that we would risk everything that has been put into this hospital. And wonderful employees. And you folks are wonderful, but we just hope you can find another way. Thank you.
Thank you. After John is Jan Ruffel.
I'm not quite sure what one should say in a circumstance like this, where you see this entity that has existed for 50 years and done okay all during that time, suddenly says, we aren't able to run our business anymore. We'll turn it over to some private entity. And I don't know what that private entity is or does, or how it would behave if it had control of our hospital. And I would like to urge that the board find some other solution. Proposal from the doctors, I understand, not a full proposal, but at least ideas. It seems to me that there ought to be a way for us to keep our hospital in control of local bodies and not have somebody else running it. If you do go forward with them, please be sure to make arrangements in the deal you make that if things go sour, we don't at least lose the building and the people who are here now. They're valuable people, it's a valuable building, and I don't like the idea that some other entity might end up controlling it. I think that's about all I've got to say for now, and I wish you luck. If I think you're making a mistake, I'm going to look into the things that can be done to prevent you from going forward
1 minute.
with the mistake. That would include initiative procedures, referendum procedures to set aside what I may come to think as a mistake, and recall of the board. Those are things that can be done. I've looked up the procedures that are necessary to do it, and I'm prepared to start proceedings to get those measures in place if that's what it takes. For a total of 14 years, 4 years while we were building it, and we had all kinds of battles and bolts and things. And then 10 years later, in the late 90s and the early part of this century. So I know a little bit about what you're going through.
Fine.
Thank you. After Jan, I have Leila, forgive me, Verjean? Verjean? Okay.
So I'm a retired RN, and I am very concerned about the defined benefit plan. If you go bankrupt, which it looks like you're kind of headed that way, do we still receive our benefits? Or are our benefits going to be cut with the new people taking over? And so I'd like to know if somebody could somehow let us know so we can kind of prepare for our retirement. And how does the merger affect the defined benefit pension? So if somebody should let us know. We have asked many people and just got a runaround from everybody. So if you could do that, we would really appreciate it. Thank you.
You. After Leila is Jan McGinnis.
I withdraw.
Okay, thank you. After that is Robin, is it Cherry?
end, and I just wanted to basically reiterate the same thing that was just said, that I worked at the hospital for 36 years, had the defined pension plan, assumed that was there for as long as I needed it, and to wonder now if it's still going to be there is pretty scary. So thank you.
Thank you. After Robin is Jennifer Briggs.
Robin Sheridan. I've been here at Bay Area Hospital for 24 years. With the potential of the merger, in December we had a forum and there was talk about we may have to have a change of affiliation for the UFCW, potentially. We were told in December there'd be communication with the union. To my knowledge, with talking to the union, there hasn't been anything yet. And if we were forced to change unions 24 years into this game, what is that going to do to my retirement, my satisfaction in the hospital? I know we've had communication at times, sometimes not so good, but we really as staff need good communication. And we just need to know that we're good. You don't need to know we're going to be here for the community. This has been a heartbreaking week. We've lost major programs to our hospital. We have friends that don't know if they're going to be able to have jobs, they're going to pay their mortgage, how they're going to put their kids through school. But we're here for the community. We feel like the community could be here to help us.
Thank you. After Jennifer, it's Marianne Looney.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Briggs. I'm a resident of Coos Bay. Each month since June 2024, I have urged you not to pursue a partnership with an outside health services company, as I believe it poses significant risks to our hospital and this community. The board has indicated it believes continuing as an independent organization is riskier than partnering with an external entity. While I understand these pressures, I urge you to reconsider this view. This board has two key powers: voting on major decisions such as partnerships and hiring or dismissing the CEO. It is the second of these actions that I believe must now be addressed. Since Mr. Moore became CEO in 2019, his leadership has been marked by troubling decisions. His leadership history at St. Mary's Corwin Hospital in Pueblo, Colorado is a striking parallel to our current challenges. Under his administration, stable services like labor and delivery and inpatient rehabilitation were cut, leaving the hospital in turmoil. The facility's struggles persisted long after his abrupt resignation 6 months later. Here at Bay Area, Mr. Moore inherited financial challenges, but has made decisions that have only worsened the situation. The disastrous rollout of the Epic system and neglecting contracts with insurers for nearly a decade have compounded the financial woes. Further alarming decisions include hiring a COO with a criminal conviction for embezzlement in 2022, and more recently, outsourcing billing to Savista, which resulted in delayed payments at a crucial time. The hospital now stands on the brink of defaulting on the very loan that existed when Mr. Moore took the helm. Yet I have witnessed him repeatedly deflect responsibility, blaming COVID, external vendors, and investment restrictions, while failing to acknowledge his own role in these outcomes. He has chosen to cut programs and benefits where employees have worked for decades, leaving his own compensation and bonuses untouched. My ask for the board today is simple. Do not take Mr. Moore's recommendations as the gospel truth. Hire a healthcare turnaround consultant instead who specializes in managing businesses with problems like Bay Area. This is a step that you can take today to turn this around and allow our hospital to remain an independent entity. The bank wants this hospital to succeed, and I believe that the right leadership can steer us away from this precipice without relinquishing control to an external partner. Thank you.
After Marianne is Douglas Jones.
Mary Ann Thoney. I retired last April. I was here for almost 37 years. 2 years I had my education at SWAC, so you could say close to 40 being here. Seen a lot of changes, seen a lot of administrative changes. Have some of my former co-workers back there when I first started. Those first 15 to 20 years were the best years of working at Bay Area Hospital. The cohesiveness of the units, even though we were separate, we all had each other's back. Now, in the last, I'd say 10 to 15 years, it's been very interesting to be one of the senior nurses and see the changes. The changes in morale are huge. How people feel about coming to work. Some of the younger ones, I thought, well, you know what? They haven't been here. They're still learning, but they don't know how the good times were. I was looking at Quorum Health, trying to find out as much information as I could about them. And I had forgot about the Lund report. It's very good information. And I think people should always look at the Lund report. It's easy to find online, but it's explained things very well for those of you that needed to be filled in, like myself. I had a lot of concerns, a lot of red flags once I read some of these articles about Quorum Health, and it makes me worry. I've been a patient here myself, received excellent care. I want that to continue. I've enjoyed being a team member, and I feel like I made a difference, and I want this facility to stay here. We need it. I can look back and see a number of nurses that left here. Some traveled, but some have gone to Coquille and Bandon and reached 1 minute, and they're enjoying their careers, and I think they have a different mindset, more of the team as it was many years ago when I first started. My biggest concern when I was looking at the Quorum Health articles, what I read in the Lund report, Quorum Health, according to the hospital, has agreed to maintain core services for at least 10 years. 10 years is not very long. So what things are going away? I'm scared for that, because when you come to the emergency room, I came to the emergency room, I needed care right away, and I fortunately was able to get done what I needed. But I'm worried in the future if some of these things are cut. I could have ended up with a major surgery and didn't have the time because of the procedure I was able to have here at Bay Area Hospital. I'm worried about some of those things will be cut. And if you have to be shipped, it can delay.
Thank you. Dr. Todd, Jared, is it Goldstein or Steen? Steen. Jared, you're after Doug.
Yeah, I miss the good old days too. I signed on in, I think it was 1979. My name is Douglas Jones. I live in Coos Bay. I'm going to read this so that I can do it in like the 3-minute time. I oppose the draft resolution for Bay Area Health District to enter into a partnership agreement with Quorum. I do not think there has been adequate exploration of all possible options for keeping Bay Area Hospital solvent by working together with all local and regional stakeholders, local clinics, physicians, nearby rural hospitals, and other potential funding sources available to a health district, community-based, not-for-profit hospital. Many studies have shown degradation of healthcare services and patient care outcomes when hospitals are partnered with private equity firms, and Quorum has a poor reputation and record. I support the concept of local clinics, physicians, hospitals, and other stakeholders to partner with Bay Area Hospital to produce a sustainable community-based healthcare cooperative, and I implore the board to explore such an option. So That's it.
After Jared is Brandon Sada.
Everybody, Jared Bolstein, North Bend. So, okay. Imagine you're in charge of a company and you had 3 applicants, and quorum was one of them. How incredibly depressed would you be if quorum was the option that you're going to give the job to? I was just in the information session prior to this meeting. There was discussion that perhaps the public just doesn't have enough information. Please don't insult our intelligence. And if you think that that comment is insulting, then let me flip this around. Perhaps even now, after all these comments, I don't think you have enough information and are fully aware of the anxiety that this is causing the community. Maybe instead of telling people that they need more information, you can inform yourselves on the reality of quorum, on your CEO, and what immediate effects this is going to have to our community. Because if you have that info, and if you still think that this is the best path, we're all in a world of pain that we can't even fathom as a community. Information isn't going to fix this, but you can fix this. And from what I'm hearing, if you're not willing to fix this, I think the community wants to and is able to fix the board. And that's not something that I think anyone wants to really entertain. But if we have to, I think that's where we're going to go. There's a rumor that OHSU and other organizations wanted to buy this hospital, but they weren't able to because they wanted to get rid of admin. And admin didn't want to lose their jobs, and now here we are. Days after employees here were told that there wouldn't be layoffs, there were massive layoffs. How can the community trust people when they're being told that they're not going to lose their job, and then literally 2 days later, dozens of people walk out the door? We can't trust you, but we have to trust you with our health. And if we can't trust you, and the health is our most important thing, where do we go from here? So,
1 minute.
Thank you. You're doing a great job, by the way. Yeah. So, just to reiterate, we all see what's being posted online, right? We all know that there's some truth and there's some not truth. But what really, really matters, is people's health. And I understand that you want to boil things down in order to build it up again. But if you boil things down too much, there isn't going to be anything to build up, and you're not going to have a community to build back up. Thank you.
After Brandon is Ann Kaiser.
So it's hard to follow up with someone like that. I mean, he makes a lot of good points. And the major point I really need to emphasize is there really does seem to be a disconnect in communication. I mean, you literally just said it. Clearly, you're not communicating to them, but that also means they're not able to communicate to you. There's clearly a disconnect between what you want and what the community wants. I spent 10 years as an ER trauma nurse working for companies just like this, going in and gutting hospitals. That was my job, was to fill the hole while they dumped other people, and then I left. Like, I know exactly what these hospitals do, and I know exactly how they do it. Like, if you want to know, come ask me. I came out of retirement today just to come into this. This is the first time I came into this hospital with the idea to actually work as a medical person after retiring, because I never thought I'd ever be involved in medicine again. Then I got a bunch of phone calls from a lot of people who know Troy. You guys, a lot of you know me. You know who I'm involved in. And I got phone calls from people who are extremely disappointed with this board's decision. And they're asking me to come out and represent these people. And I want to let you know, you will be seeing me more. And I'm not just going to go away. This isn't the only time you're going to see me, because they've asked me to do this. I'm here because they wanted me to tell you this cannot happen. And these people aren't stupid. They know there's nothing about educating these people. If anything, they need to educate you. It's okay to change your mind at this point. It's okay to take a step back and go, wait, maybe the community does need to be heard, and maybe we are making the wrong decision right now. Because clearly, the community isn't on board with this. Even if it's 50%, 25%, it doesn't matter. They clearly are not on the same page as you guys. Like, there's something disconnected. There's no way you guys could honestly say that you're on the same page as everybody else, especially after all these people came up here. It's definitely a communication issue, and it's a two-way street. It's not just about you convincing people. Maybe you need to open your head, open your heart, and realize that maybe you made a mistake. It's okay to take a step back. It's okay to find alternative solutions. It's okay to find other revenue sources. We don't always have to cut. You talked about cutting fingers. Instead of it's a tree, we could grow more branches. We can find more revenue sources. You don't always have to cut. There's two parts of an equation on a spreadsheet: subtraction and addition. Find the addition, stop subtracting.
After Ann is John Briggs.
My name is Ann Heiser. It's spelled K-E-I-Z-E-R, not K-A. And I live in Glasgow. I am really concerned about how things are going. And I would like you to explain to all of us in detail why you feel that quorum is a preferable way to go. I'd like to know your thoughts about why you are so in favor of that rather than just leaving it up to the bank if worse comes to worse. It sounds to me like leaving it up to the bank is about the same. Secondly, about the tax base. I would like you to explain to all of us in detail why we lost the tax base, and is there anything you can do to get it back? Because it seems like that's one possibility that isn't being discussed much. The third thing I want to say is I would like to represent senior citizens. As you get old, and if you're not there yet, you may not understand. It's a big deal to have to go to Eugene, to have to go to OHSU. It really is, and you need care sometimes quickly. We need this hospital. Our community needs this hospital. My husband's family has been involved in the hospital area in this for generations. There have been a lot of Dr. Geisers. My husband's no longer here. I wish he were, that he could speak to you. Thank you for seeing me. I know you're doing your best, but I don't think quorum is the answer that we need. And that's what really worries me. And I want to focus that I'm trying to say this from the sense of a senior citizen, an older person. We're the ones that go to the hospital, unfortunately.
1 minute.
That's all. Thank you for what you have done.
Thank you. Mr. Briggs, since our last public commenter, do we have a process for anyone online?
Yes, they were to type their name in the chat.
Okay.
Name's John Briggs. I live in North Bend, Oregon. I haven't been involved in this thing, but I'm finding out it's very complicated. So one of the things I like to do is research. I'd like to go to minutes, or in this case, maybe even recording of prior meetings. I can't find them. And that shouldn't be. So I just want to make that comment. Then I want, what a little bit I have been able to research. I have two items that strike me as being issues. One is a due diligence in looking at all the alternative proposals. And I have to say that I got that alternative proposal that I was thinking about had to do with Bay Clinic, Northern Medical, and the Independent Physicians Association. And what I saw and what I read in this letter to the editor
indicated that it was, no, we don't need to look at it. It takes too long. I'm sorry. You're in a public institution. It takes time to get through a public institution. Another issue that I found was what appears to be conflicts of interest, and it basically comes back to my neighbor, Mr. Moore, who I really appreciate, and I think he does, is a very good person. But whether or not he's doing a good job for us in terms of how this whole process works out, I have a question in my mind on that. Here's the final thing I want to speak to. You have your backs to your constituents. This is the only institution I've ever been to where the governing body has their backs to the institution, to the constituents, and I think you need to change that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll go to.
There are a few questions in the chat online.
Okay, so that's going to end our public comment. I want to thank all of you. I will turn around. And public comment is meant not for dialogue, but it's meant for you to come in and be able to say what's on your mind to the board so that we can hear you. And I appreciate that. And I know that every board member up here appreciates that. I would ask, and I think we all know, we've had that example of looking for things online and social media and see things that aren't necessarily true. So all I'm asking is that we exhibit a little bit of caution in everything that you're reading out there. I heard lots of good comments about critical thinking and research, and I appreciate that. And I hope that's true and that's followed through. Because anyone can put anything online. It's not fact checked. It can lead to misleading directions. And at the end, it really doesn't help us with the goal, which is what I heard every single person in this room who commented say, is our hospital is important to us and it must stay open. That was the common theme to everyone here. And I can guarantee you and assure you, and I'm not going to, the other board members will have their chance to say, but I can assure you that every one of them believes the same thing. Every one of these board members up here is either your colleague, your neighbor, your friend, and has had some level of association with this hospital. And I don't want this to sound dismissive. We do care. And you're right, it is our job. My point for saying we lose sleep on it tonight is that your comments don't go unnoticed. We hear that. We hear the weight and the gravity of the decision that's in front of us. And our primary goal has always been that this hospital remain open and vibrant. I don't have time to, and I'll end this. My contact information is available and open, and I would encourage any of you at any time to reach out to me, email, phone, meet me for coffee. I am happy to answer any question and talk to you as much as you need me to talk to help you understand where we're coming from and the information that we have that helped us get to the decision we did. Part of what I was going to say was, so that's my first part. And John, just real quick, and this isn't meant for dialogue, but you're right. And none of us like having our back to you either. But we also have the camera up there that's watching us. So we're kind of stuck between the people online seeing us or the people in the room seeing us. And, there's a whole debate about whether the room is set up appropriately or not. But, if we're honest, we're not used to this much participation. It's nice to see, but it's not done on purpose. And none of us like to have our backs to you. So that being said, the decisions we've come to have been based on facts and numbers and market trends. And whether we're able to save the hospital, and I would argue that this hospital's doors still remain open because of Brian Moore and his team. It's not magic. These are numbers. The hospital runs more efficiently. They do more with less. And it is not an excuse to say that the revenue streams continue to decrease while the costs continue to increase. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in. If your costs keep outpacing what money you're bringing in, that's going to end at some point. They have done a great job and a difficult job of trying to trim down to the core, which is our core mission of providing the health of this community. We would all love to see us back to where we had moms, child care, our cardiology department, our oncology department, all of those things bustling. And our vision is to get us in a position and partner with a system that'll help us get to that point. There are some negative things about Quorum out there. We've read them too. We've also met with them and we've understood the backstory and where they've been and where they're going and how they align with our missions, which all of you have stated tonight. It's the care of our community so that people can have a place to come, that we care about our employees, that they all have safe, steady jobs, that your retirements are secure. That is all factored into this. Whether Quorum is the best partner or not, that's for debate. But I will say what Quorum did do was say, we think you're of value. We like your mission. And we said our mission matches with your mission. And we think we can make a partnership and grow for what their vision is of rural healthcare, which we want to be part of rural healthcare and be here, to your point, John, another 50 years. Markets change. It is different in healthcare. And you must know that it is difficult for any independent rural hospital anywhere across the country to be successful. I literally just read in Becker's yesterday, another 10 rural hospitals closed. Not all 10 of those had to have bad managers and poor fiscal responsibilities. If you want to help us in this venture, reach out to OHA and tell them to change their reimbursement model. Tell them that our providers, our clinicians, our nurses should be reimbursed appropriately for the work they do. Because we do care about you and the work that you do. I go on for another hour. I don't want to. We have a board meeting to go to. I appreciate you all here. I'm going to turn it over to my other board members for comments. Patrice?
I just wrote a few things down. A lot of you know me. I've lived in North Bend, Coos Bay for over 50 years. I came from the plains state of Kansas. So in these last 50 years, there's been huge changes in the population, in the business districts. There's no more mills. There's no more plywood mills. There's no more big companies, big commercial insurance to pay their bills and to keep the hospital solvent. We're dealing with almost 85% of our income from government-based reimbursement, which is pathetic to say the least. So working with that and Brian did come into a position where the previous CEO, because I was an employee here and I know, spent money like it was water and redid the hospital the way he wanted. And things were not, there was nothing left invested in our savings. He spent almost every dime of the savings and had a loan. So things started that way. Yes, other things happened. COVID hit. And our reimbursement is just awful. I have learned a lot. I've only been on the board, not even, a year and 5 months or something like that. And I went to the meetings for almost 5 months before I ran for the board. The only reason I ran for the board is I thought I could do something helpful, something good, continue to be involved past my retirement. And it's like all of this information just hit me upside the head. It was overwhelming. Yes, I have to budget for my own home and my own finances. This is on a scale you have to reset your mind to. And it's been difficult, and we have looked at a lot of things. And I mean, if somebody can come up with $150 million for us, great, we'll just stay as is. But we have to be looking for that bottom line to continue to maintain as many employees as we can, to continue the health of our community, to continue to keep our emergency rooms open, to continue to have the population here so that physicians may want to come here and work here. I mean, we're bleeding physicians and providers like crazy. It seems like the turnover rate is faster than anything I've ever seen in this area. And it's not just here. It happens everywhere. And physicians like to work in big hospitals. They have better hours. They have better pay. And I understand that. But, and, you know, your comments about taking care of the board if we don't do things you like. Well, okay, which one of you or your friends are going to run for the board and make those decisions and come to the meetings and go through all of the information and sit in the finance meetings and do the quality, et cetera, and listen to everything that's going on? Do you have friends out there that you can still go to the Coos County website under elections and sign up to run for the board? There'll be elections in May. So we're happy to have any of you who are not employees run for the board. We like the input. We like you being involved, but it needs to be involvement prior to these times of acute stress. I'm sorry. I kind of got off on tangent.
That's okay. Thank you, Patrice. Tom?
I think I want to address my colleagues who have worked at this hospital and given their life in service. I'm talking about the individuals who came tonight talking about concern about the
It was working.
Yeah, it worked. We
Yes,
can
it
hear.
has
Thank
worked.
you. Define a benefit plan. Our goal is to make that whole. If we go bankrupt, it is gone. Okay, so we at least control that we have maintained the same staff. And you talked about UFCW. We have conditions on this agreement that maintains the same labor relations and our obligation to our retirees. So rest easy that is something that you don't have to worry about. We are going to make that whole. It's been part of our conversation. And I understand when you're in a vacuum, my clinic, I wonder about it. It's like I'm in a buyout phase for my clinic, so I worry about that. And you all, I look around the room, and these are all familiar people that I've spent my career working with, and I respect you. This is a very significant challenge for us as board members. This is not what we sought out as our first quick solution. And I have my fantasy was, I'll get a lottery ticket and I'll give $50 million to the hospital. And Fetzer asked about, why can't we have the tax levy back? It's not constitutionally available to us, and it wouldn't provide the money we need anyway. So, I mean, we have been through this process of coming to a solution, and this is where we are. And it is, anyway, I'll leave it at that, but thank you for coming.
Barb?
Hi, I want to thank everybody for coming. It's so often over the years, there have been maybe one or two people in the audience. The last 3 or 4 meetings has been the anomaly, and it's great to see that you care so much about this organization. And sometimes I feel like a relatively newcomer, but I've lived in this area for 49 years now. So I guess I'm no longer a newcomer, but this organization is important to me and to my family. And, I feel a real responsibility to make sure that it continues. And as Tom has mentioned, this may not be the ideal solution, but it's a way to keep the doors open. It's a way to keep some control. That's part of the negotiations that management's going over right now with a potential partner. And if we fail in this endeavor, then we are leaving it on the bank's doorstep as to what goes next. And I know they don't want to shut us down either, but they have responsibilities to their regulatory agencies and to their shareholders. And so we can't rely on them to just allow us to continue on. We need to figure out a way to get this done. And as a board member, I'm doing all I can to make sure we get the best result we can. Just knowing there's not a lot of great choices out there right now. And as Patrice has said, anybody is willing and able to serve on the board if they're willing to go down and put their name up for election. There's nothing wrong with that. It opens your eyes as to what's going on. And again, thank you for showing how much you care about the organization.
I have a point of clarification.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, it's the May option is the only option for elections. As in, if people didn't want the decision, the only thing we could do is wait till May and vote for new board members.
No, that's probably more in-depth answer. We can discuss that afterwards if you want.
Yeah, I mean, you basically all just said you're not changing your mind. Literally what you all just said.
So again, this time period.
Point of clarification. That's what you all
This time period is for board comments.
Yeah. Just clarifying.
Go ahead, Renee.
I joined the board in July. I believe. This has been.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's hard to look at, excuse me, Dr. Matander. He was my physician and he left, as many of you may know, and now I get to look at him in a different capacity. Been in the community a very long time. My background is business. Specifically, I've been through 7 different mergers in the financial institution area. It's very difficult, I'll be honest, to sit here and listen to some hateful comments tonight. Everything that I have seen this board do has been in the good faith and intent of finding the best option. I think that there may be, and again, I'm not trying to say that there hasn't, I don't want to insult the person that made the comment that there wasn't enough information, perhaps. I do not think that there has been enough emphasis, maybe that's a better choice of words, on the bank's involvement in this process. This is an international bank. This is not our corner bank where we can go and ask for a deferral. This is a bank that is, as Barb said, they're operating under regulatory scrutiny, and they are also operating under the need to remain an insured institution, which means if there is a loan that's at risk, they have to put funds back an expense. So they're watching us very, very carefully right now. That letter of intent is what is allowing them to not come in and take over at this point. Again, this is a $141 trillion bank. We're not talking a little bank down the corner. This is a bank that really doesn't, they're not going to take to us going in and asking for a deferral in a simple way. It's a very, very big transaction, and they have the power to come in and do what they would do in any other circumstances with a loan that's at risk. So I think perhaps that needs to be in the context of let's take some time. We're already in default. We're not in default for making payments, but we are in default of the loan covenants right now. Mary Lou is going to talk later, but operating loss for November, $2.1 million. That's for the month.
That is on the website. If anyone needs help, I'm happy to show them where the documents are. Those are the constraints in which we're making a decision. I've been to a number of finance meetings, been through, of course, board meetings. Many of the people that are saying, let's take some time and make a different decision, let's look at another option, I never saw them in any of those meetings. Again, I've been a short timer on here, so I can only speak to what I see, but people that are very vocal about making comments, they weren't at the table before. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Renee. Okay. We're going to go ahead and move to the rest of the agenda. And the first item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And I would entertain a motion on that.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second that. It's been moved and seconded. Call the question. Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. That motion passes. Next, let's go to a strategic affiliation update. Brian, the floor is yours.
Would you pass the microphone, please?
Yes.
Thanks. We structured the agenda because I felt this topic might have the most interest to what I thought would be a larger group of guests at the beginning. So just to fill in the gap since our last board meeting, we did move forward, and the day following our December board meeting, reached final terms on the letter of intent with quorum. Happy to share that we got signatures on that. And there are some really strong agreements that address and mitigate many of the concerns shared by this group that did the research. The research that community members have spoken of this evening, we were able to see that through the process. And I think as we were in this room face to face with leaders from Quorum, really understanding the formation of Quorum is important to understand their trajectory towards the future and how that may be different than their recent past. We heard a very coherent explanation. That formation, came from Community Health System, a large operator of hospitals across the country who experienced some significant financial challenges. And a tool that they had in that structure as a for-profit entity and as an operator of multiple hospitals was to batch up many of their underperforming hospitals and spin them off. And that's how Quorum started. Not as a strategically gathered group of hospitals to achieve high performance, but as a larger organization's effort to clean up their own performance. And what we saw and what's available in the history is Quorum reacting and moving out of that formation period. They divested hospitals. They utilized bankruptcy, a tool that probably Bay Area Hospital would seriously be considering, in the last 4 years during our recovery. As a government district entity in Oregon, that tool of bankruptcy is not available to help Bay Area Hospital potentially restructure its debts. I haven't done an exhaustive study, but a number of the hospitals that we saw were spun off, or rather than just flown to the ground, they seem to be very thoughtfully placed with logical health systems with strong presence in the region, enabling those hospitals after they left Quorum to move forward with a much more supportive environment than they would have received under Community Health System or that Quorum would have been able to provide. Quorum is done divesting and now is building forward, and that's where their conversation with Bay Area Hospital picks up as they look towards the future, focused as an organization on operating a distributed network of rural hospitals. We talked a lot about local control, And there is a continuum of hospital health system operations, with one end being very centralized and the other end being decentralized, with services and decisions resting in the local community. On that continuum of health system structure, Quorum sits on the decentralized half of the spectrum. They still rely heavily on a local leadership team to understand the issues of the local market, to work and partner with the local physicians, and to put together a hospital that delivers what the local community is looking for. That was attractive. That aligned, I think, not only with the objectives that Bay Area Hospital had, that the board outlined for the organization, but aligns with many of the concerns shared by our constituents here. We signed the letter of intent in December. We had our first kickoff kind of preview session with the transaction team, and we'll be moving forward at a weekly cadence now in January and until the work is done, really with significant due diligence requests that we had from them. It's hundreds of lines deep, everything from environmental assessment to contractual review to disclosures in any outstanding legal cases, quality information. It's an exhaustive and very detailed process that is natural and normal at this point, moving from a letter of intent into a definitive agreement. So we have represented the hospital. We have our special counsel, very skilled and experienced in healthcare merger acquisitions, this kind of transactions. So we've retained special counsel, and I think they're very competent. We have our executive team there participating, and then from Quorum, we have the CEO, we have the chief financial officer, their in-house legal, their their specialty merger counsel, and we are going through a very structured process. So we have also in Quorum somebody who's point on due diligence, Mary Lou's facilitating that here on our side, our chief financial officer, and then kind of a project manager, if you will, who's stepping us through a very structured and thoughtful process. The reaction, the experience, the response that we have had, even through the holidays, the access to the top executive team has surprised me. Their responsiveness and willing to address our local concerns and questions here from the Bay Area Hospital side. And it aligns very consistently with our experience during the pitch phase of our exploration. Also happy to share, we were able to facilitate a meeting with some leaders of our independent physician groups and another Quorum leader, actually from McKinsey-Willamette, and have a face-to-face meeting to really, again, move past the internet and into a more personal relationship and information gathering. I also want to elaborate on the hospital's financial position. We have been keeping our bank very well informed throughout this process. They have been happy to hear that the board understands the obligation to repay the bank. And as we got close and foreshadowed for them that our December financial performance was unlikely to rise to the level to make us compliant with our profitability commitment, our EBITDA, they were very comforted to know that we were exploring all options, including health system merger. We have submitted a request for forbearance in anticipation of the December numbers going through that formal test, if you will. We have a quarterly test with the bank for those covenants, and that will place us in that technical default. Again, we're not late on our payments. We're not in danger of being late on our payments. However, we've fallen short of that profitability requirement. and obligation in those covenants. And so we have in the forbearance request asked for them to cap the interest rate and keep it at our current rate, or to go no greater than 5%, which would help for us. We have asked them to waive the callability of the loan, where when we're in default, we can be immediately paid and due. We have asked them to allow us to reduce the days cash on hand that we're required to maintain, and to waive the profitability requirement that was part of that original arrangement. So we look forward to entering into those negotiations with the bank and seeing what they're willing to do as we go through this time period. I had split in the proposed agenda. I had a couple of other items, but I wonder if it might be possible to just go ahead and address those.
Yeah, I saw that. I think that's great, Brian. Thank you.
So even as we go through this and throughout, really every phase of our 2-year recovery, we have been focused on, the strategy that we're implementing, and also looking for, what do we need as a fallback option. Even as we have signed a letter of intent, we continue to look for additional opportunities to improve the hospital's performance. And, should this deal fall through, to be positioned to continue to move forward with the minimum amount of harm to our services here in the community. We certainly believe that the pathway with quorum gives the greatest assurance, not only to keeping the doors open, but to reassuming that really important position where we're investing and growing and adding new services, so that there is less of a need for our community to travel outside of the area for care. One of the recent cuts, if you will, on our data was to look at how Bay Area Hospital stacks up with other hospitals in the state relative to our dependence on government payers as a funding source. And it was very powerful to see that of the 62 hospitals in the state, out of the top 6, like 5 of them are right here along the South Coast. Of those, only 1 does not enjoy additional cost-based reimbursement support structures, and that's Bay Area Hospital. We are funded, unlike critical access hospitals, we are funded just like the hospitals in Portland, where we are paid by Medicare based on a diagnosis-related group, a DRG. And so a patient comes in with a particular diagnosis, and we get paid for treating that diagnosis. And what that means is that not only does it feel difficult here to get the numbers to work, it is difficult here to get the numbers work. I am the CEO here at Bay Area Hospital, and I am accountable for the hospital's financial performance, its relationship with the community, our success with employees, our ability to stay open for care. And I understand that responsibility. And I think it's also my job to inform the community, our board, and our employees on what the state of the environment is. I certainly hope of the healthcare and the hospital industry. I certainly hope that isn't misunderstood to be me not taking accountability for my role as CEO. Leadership roles, we get to do some great things, and we get to shoulder the weight when times are difficult. And I'm certainly here to own that responsibility. And so where do we go from here, and how does this fit into options? We understand that in Washington, there are a couple of hospitals that fall into a similar category in Bay Area Hospital, 60 minutes, 60 miles from another town with similar services. and providing a lot of kind of rural referral hospital support services or services to the community. And in Washington, they have some additional financial support built into the state payment system. And so I'm beginning the search to look for someone who could help us in this legislative session, evaluate the potential of a legislative adjustment that might allow us to move towards some of those additional resources. And I do think that's an opportunity that we would have to engage our community, engage our union, and assist in that advocacy. So we'll be working in the coming weeks to see if we can put together some more language and begin pursuing that strategy. Happy to answer any questions from the board. That concludes my major update items for today.
Thank you, Brian. Anybody have any questions?
Can you give us a sense of the total number of people that were impacted by this cost-cutting measures that were implemented this week? I know we didn't fill 38 open land.
Question?
It was work.
Yes, I'll repeat the question. The question was, with the hospital's communication this last week as services were closed and layoff, how many people did that impact? So we had 9.3 FTEs associated with the program closures, and I think that represented probably about 12 or 13. We have, with our union, some bumping rights, and there are part-time positions, as you might imagine. The layoffs impacted another 10 FTE positions that were kind of scattered through different departments throughout the facility. So we were kind of in the neighborhood of about 25 employees that were impacted with those layoffs and announced program closures.
Thank you. Brian, on that same vein, we talked about the moms program and the difficult decision to discontinue that, but you also had talked about really trying to work with other community partners to see if they could transition and assimilate some of that stuff so that the impact would be less. Did we make any forward progress with that?
Yeah, so there's a Family Connects Oregon program, and we were in the process of trying to really pound the square peg of our program in the round hole of that state program. And, we reached the point where we felt like we really need to step back. My understanding is the Family Connects program, which also provides in-home visits to new parents and newborns, in pretty much every other area of the state where the program exists, it sits with Public County Health. And so we reached out to Public County Health to see if they had the capacity and if they were interested. It's going to be a lift, right, to stand this program up. And I'm just delighted to share the warm response and reception that we had from Public Health to say, absolutely, let us see what we can do to help. And so what we're anticipating, they are preparing kind of a list of questions, and we will engage with them, do as much knowledge transfer as possible. I know we have some incredibly dedicated and talented employees who have supported moms. One of the things they said right off the bat was, we may get funding, but where are we going to find the staff? And, it could be that we have staff who want to stay focused on that kind of program. And so there may be an opportunity for them to move into a funded position with public health. Continuing a very similar program in terms of its intended benefit. We also held a couple of positions on that unit, knowing that we might have nurses to transition into that program. So we did some proactive work to also secure an option for them to stay here at Bay Area Hospital as well.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Brian. I'm going to go ahead and move forward to the Quality and Patient Safety Committee report. Treese.
Well, the report is basically the same as it was last month since we didn't meet again. But I would like to remind the board to review, especially the CMS 2024 final rule, and look through those key points again. That's what Brian was visiting about with us at the other meeting, that we're going to have to increase the time that we report. And I don't know if I can talk for 20 minutes on quality, but I'll do my very best.
Make it action-packed, drive quality forward.
Kelly, did you have something you wanted to add, or are we good? All right, let's go to the Finance Committee. Barb, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. The executive summary is on page 29 of your packet. There's no capital requests that are above the threshold, but noted are some of the non-threshold items. We did have several that were pushing up against the threshold, particularly the C-arm and radiology, 183,517. So that's just for your information. Down towards the bottom, the operating loss for the month of November was 2.1. Year-to-date, $8.8 million loss. The bottom line, the net loss for November was $2 million, and year-to-date, $7.3 million. We do have an EBITDA of November loss, $1.2 million, and year-to-date EBITDA loss of 4.2. Oh, sorry. And the cash balance, which is our cash and our investments, for November was 54.2 million. The Finance Committee narrative, it shows up on pages 30 through 34. And I think that moves us along to the service line margin insight, which Mary Lou will proceed with.
Thanks, Barb. Mary Lou.
Just so the public is aware, all the financials are posted online under bayareahospital.org. If you go to About Us and Board of Directors, at the very bottom of the page is all the financial information as well as the minutes of the board meetings. So just as where to find that information. On page 39 of your packet is this margin insight service line contribution analysis. What this does is it's a quasi cost accounting. And what we do is this is more directional than it is absolute. The cost accounting module is fairly expensive to invest in. And so what we do is what we call a ratio-based cost accounting. So what happens is every quarter we look at how much we charge and versus how much costs are. So supplies are allocated back in a reverse markup order. And then all of their costs are allocated based as a percentage of charges. And so what we do is then we can see directionally how different programs are, whether they're contributing positively to the bottom line or not. And we do not look at indirect costs. So things like, can we get the so things like housekeeping, facilities, plant operations, building costs, utilities are not factored into this. This is direct revenues minus direct expenses. And again, this is at the patient level, and we do a hierarchy. So we look at what the patients are in here for by looking at their charges. So if a patient is in here, say for a cardiac cath procedure, and they also give imaging and laboratory services.
Can we pause just a minute, Mary Lou, until we get the...
I'm just explaining the methodology.
Okay, so we're not anywhere ahead. Okay.
So just explain methodology. Right. So what happens is we have a hierarchy. So we say if a patient's in here, say for cardiac cath, imaging, and laboratory, it's contributed to the cardiac cath service line. And so what we do is we have this hierarchy of what patients really come for, what's the driver for being in the organization,
And so these are not absolute. So for example, if we look at the outpatient laboratory, you're not going to see all laboratory costs and revenues in that because a lot of that is in other service lines. So that's just kind of the limitations of this analysis, but it gives us some very good direction. So if you go to the first slide, which is the overall summary. I went to slide 2 first.
Other way.
Other way. So on slide 1, this is every data point here is 12 months ending.
Can we blow that up a little bit, please? Can you see that in the back? A little bigger?
Yes.
How about that?
Well, each data point on here is 12 months ending. If you can scroll down just a little bit. There you go. So you can see here it's 12 months ending 6/30 of 2020 to 12 months ending 6/30 of 2024. The first column is the amount of charges the hospitals charged in that quarter. Then the next is actual payments. So you can see for the 12 months ending 6/30 of 24, charges were $703 million. In the very last row, you can see the 12 months ending 6/30 of 2020, it was $493 million. Payments were $218 million for 12 months ending 6/30 2024, which means we got 30.93% payment rate of what we charged. If you look down historically, that's the lowest we've been due to our commercial payer mix continuing to decline. A study just actually was released in the HFMA magazine where CMS is actually, and legislation is doing an audit of how much Medicare is reimbursing hospitals. And they have found that Medicare only reimburses 85% of the cost. And that's nationwide. And it's worse at rural hospitals because they don't reimburse as much of the overhead cost. And so rural hospitals actually have less than 85% coverage ratio of payments to cost, meaning if it costs the hospital $1, we're only getting 85 cents right now from Medicare as a national level. If we were to do that here at Bay Area Hospital, it would probably be worse. So you can see that the payment ratio has been declining. In 12 months ending 2020, we were at 33.21%. The AR balance, there's always going to be money still owed, whether it's delayed payments from insurance companies or from self-pay patients. We actually cost faster now. We used to wait 6 months and then cost. We're now doing it every 4 months to try and get more real-time information. But you can see our direct costs in that same time period. Direct costs the last 12 months was $178 million approximately. If you look down at 6/30/23, it was $171 million, so an increase of almost $6 million in a year of cost. And the direct margin you can see for 6/30/24 was just under $40 million. But our indirect costs are $71 million, almost $72 million. The one thing our program does not count in is non-patient revenues. And so we had another $25 million of non-patient revenues that aren't in this model. So an overall loss of just over $6 million, which ties to our audited financial statements. You can see I asterisked 3/31 of 23 because I made a major assumption change after that quarter, which is costing benefits to the cost centers before we did the costing analysis, because before all benefits were considered overhead. And what we wanted to do is cost that into the departments with the salaries. So you can see, while we're doing better on our direct margin from the last few years, we still are having a significant contribution margin not covering indirect costs. So we want to break that down by service line. So if you scroll down 2 pages, Denise.
Just real quick, Mary Lou, any idea where the $6 million increased costs came from? Did you track that, or?
It's salaries and wages mostly. Cardiology, you can see here, again, it's the same 12 months ending graph format. Patients can have more than one account. This cardiology includes cath lab, Prefontaine, cardiac rehab, It also includes the professional charges. So you can see here in the 12 months ending 6/30/24, we had 51,743 accounts that were deemed in this service line with just over $100 million in charges, $30 million in payments, and direct costs of $24.7 million, a direct margin of $5.1-ish million. You can see when we started in 6/30/22, this cardiology was losing $1.5 million, almost $1.6 million. So in the 2 years, the organization has really turned around the profitability of the cardiac service line. A lot of dedicated focus on this. But you can see the net to gross, while we've increased the profitability, the payment rate is going down. So we started at 33.7% and we're down to 29.8%. Next slide. The next slide is overall surgeries. So again, this is patients that came in mainly for surgery. Again, patients can have more than one account. It includes any patients with surgical or GI encounters. It includes professional charges, anesthesia. Professional charges are no longer included at the patient level due to the fact that we changed our billing vendor that doesn't use Epic, and so the costing model that's been developed can't take into account those patients. I can bring back the new vendor is doing slightly better than previous vendors in collecting monies for professional cardiology bills. So in the surgery analysis trend, you can see in 6/30/24, this is probably the drop in accounts are twofold. Number one, not including the professional billing for anesthesia, and I'm trying to quantify how much that is. But the other thing is this drop in volumes. So we've had fewer surgical encounters. You can see that charges are $168 million. Payments are $55.5 million. Total cost is $45.7 million for a direct margin of $8.7 million, which is, again, a little bit down from where we've been historically. The interesting fact here is professional charges never cover cost. The hospital is always upside down when we look at professional charges versus wages for providers. But it's made up in all the hospital-based revenues. It's just the nature of the game at a hospital that the reimbursement to hospitals providers don't cover the cost. So we make it up in the HP. So it's kind of interesting that our direct margin is actually holding pretty steady from before. It's not at our high. We're down about $1 million from even a couple of quarters before that. But we don't have all the anesthesia professional accounts in here, and the loss of those contributes. So I'm going to do some more deep dive on that. Next slide.
So just quickly on surgery, part of that volume draw is a significant portion is the eye clinic building their own eye surgery, right? We lost all of that volume.
Yeah, that was those were included back in 22.
Okay.
So going down. And the next one is a sublook. It's looking at just at orthopedics, which is in part of the overall surgery trend. There's additional in this orthopedics because orthopedic also includes orthopedic clinic patients, those patients that were included in the surgery analysis, but also physician billings that are not directly in the surgical suite. So this has some additional pieces that were in the surgery analysis. And you can see the big increase in the numbers here are due to the outpatient orthopedic clinic and more related to the professional billings in that clinic. You can see here that the charges were $36.7 million. Payments are $12 million. You can see pretty consistently over time that we've had a drop since about December of 23 to current of the overall profitability of orthopedics, as fewer and fewer orthopedics are being done here at the hospital, with the local providers either retiring or doing more in their surgery center. So as the hospital has had to employ the orthopods, this program definitely has contributed to a decline, and that's part of the reason why surgery is also declining. You can see here the net to gross is actually pretty well in this service line.
So again, the direct margin, the loss in the ortho trend is because we're having to sustain the full employment cost of the orthopedic surgeon.
Correct.
Versus giving facility rights to our community orthopedics.
Correct, and we don't have all the elective procedures that a community practice would have. So going down, a cancer center. This is actually two different lines. So this is the cancer center. I've also included the infusion center on this slide because a lot of the infusion isn't cancer, but some of it is cancer. So I wanted to kind of include them together. Again, patients can have more than one account, so the account numbers aren't unique number of patients. This also includes professional billings. It includes both med-onc and rad-onc in the all cancer center outpatient line. And then the infusion line is separate because those are the patients just in the infusion center. So on 6/30/24, Cancer Center had $104 million in charges, $32 million in payments, and almost $25 million in costs for a contribution margin of $7.3 million. The infusion suite had charges of almost $35 million, payments of $8.9 million, for a direct margin of 3.1, which is 32% direct margin. Just for a caveat for everyone to be aware, we need 34% from every service line to cover costs. So when you look at that direct margin of 27.7% of all cancer center outpatient, it doesn't cover the overall 34% overhead costs that the area hospital has. And you can see that the infusion suite at 32.3 comes close to covering overhead costs. And again, that overhead cost is an average for the entire organization.
So is that overhead cost, is that average across other rural hospitals of our size? Is there a standard sort of overhead cost?
I don't have the benchmarks on that, Troy. It's hard to come by. I would need to scrub some cost reports for that information.
Thank you.
If you look, though, at the very bottom, the Cancer Center on 6/30/22 had a contribution margin of $748,000. And the Infusion Center had a contribution margin of $556,000. The direct correlation between the increase here is our 340B program. Back in 2022, we did not have a 340B program, which allows hospitals to buy drugs at a reduced cost. It was a program that the hospital invested in back in 2022, and that is the sole reason for the increased reimbursement and the profitability here.
Just a technical detail. Mary Lou was arriving as we were doing this work. We had a 340B for years, but it wasn't optimized. And so we discovered that it hadn't been optimized and hadn't reflected the change in Medicare. And so we moved from a sole community hospital to a disproportionate share in our 340B program. And there were millions of additional dollars to keep here in the community. You know, that represents almost a tenfold increase in the profitability of the cancer program here. That was lifeblood for our hospital, and part of that, $54 million turnaround.
Thank you for clarifying. The next slide is Wound Care Center. So this Wound Care Center includes both the hospital billing, like HB billing, hospital billing, and professional billing. You can see here, this is one service line that we actually continue to lose money, and we're losing more money than we used to on wound care services. The 12 months ending 6/30/24, we had $3.8 million in charges, but only $1.3 million in payments. A direct cost of $2 million for a direct margin of negative $774,000. Margin loss is almost 60% in this service line. So we continue to work on this service line to try and figure out how we can continue offering this service line. Even though it's losing money for the organization. So a lot of work is going into work on this currently.
To try to turn that around.
It's already, this year alone, it has recovered a little bit. It's targeting about a $400,000 loss right now with the leadership of our partner, Restorix, who is our operating partner. And they've done a significant amount of work to increase our hyperbaric treatment. And they've coached the physicians and the nurses in documentation. So some of that has been recovered to previous state, but this program in general is really hard to get to full profitability or even break even. So a really tough service line.
Reimbursement, again, really low and hard to come by.
It's hard because it's not done, a lot of this care is not done in primary care or any outpatient setting, and hospitals end up doing it in organizations where a hospital owns primary care. It makes a lot of impact because it helps the full program, but it's a little different here. And we receive, like, we're the only wound care and hyperbaric program for 100 miles or more. So patients come to us from the California border and north of here just to receive services.
So just clarify, the Coquille Valley has a wound care clinic, just not the hyperbaric.
They don't have hyperbaric, that is correct.
Thank you.
The next one is outpatient imaging. And again, this one is where we start getting into a subset of the service line. So this is only patients that came in truly just for outpatient imaging. It doesn't include patients that were in here for something else that also had outpatient imaging. It doesn't include patients that were inpatients that had imaging. So that's where the hierarchy comes into play. So the 12 months ending 6/30 of 24, we had $64 million in charges with $16.7 million in payments, with a $13.1 million in costs. So a direct contribution margin of $3.3 million. If you notice, our direct margin is 5.6% in imaging. So extremely low margin in imaging. And you can see that we've, again, been declining in here as we've had to employ the radiology group. We used to have a independent group that did the reads and they did their own billings. But then they gave the hospital notice that they were no longer doing that. And so now we employ via contract the radiologists. The next one is outpatient lab. And again, this is just a subset of laboratories. So these are patients that, quite frankly, only have laboratory charges on their accounts. You can see at 6/30 of 24, charges were $13.2 million and payments were $3.4 million, with a direct cost of $2.7 million for a direct margin of $684,000, a margin of 20%. You can see a pretty significant decline, almost a $400,000 decline in the last 2 years in the overall profitability of outpatient laboratory. The next slide. It's going. It's going.
Finicky mouse.
Great.
Yeah.
So this one here, it's really hard to break out inpatients by their diagnosis group. So as Denise tries to get this honed in, what I decided to do on this one is by length of stay, because our patients, like Brian said, are paid by diagnosis related group, which means they're paid by what they have and what we're treating for when they come in. So it doesn't matter if a patient with pneumonia comes in and stays for 2 days or stays here for 2 weeks, we get the same payment. And so this is looking at the outpatients by length of stay.
So sorry, clarify that again. You get a bucket of money, whether it's 2 days or 2 weeks.
Correct.
Based on their diagnosis.
Based on their diagnosis. And one of the biggest challenges we have right now with our length of stay is getting patients to the next level of care. We don't have enough skilled nursing facilities, group homes, long-term care facilities for those patients. And so once an insurance company deems they're not medically necessary for their hospital stay, the hospital gets zero payment while they sit in our inpatient facility while we're waiting to get them to the next level of care. We are starting to track how many days the hospital ends up staffing for those patients, paying salaries and wages, paying for the medicines, imaging for those patients while they're sitting waiting to go back home, to get to the skilled nursing facility, to get to the group home, that the hospital gets absolutely no payment for. So we're working on tracking that.
We can't let them go because they're not appropriate to be independent.
Correct.
Have we done anything further about the ideas floated at some of our meetings recently about using swing beds in our critical access hospitals to offload patients that can't go to nursing homes?
So I'm trying to work right now to get a meeting with Rahino and case management to start talking about how do we transfer patients back into swing bed status at the critical access hospitals. For those that don't know, swing bed is not quite nursing home care, but it's less acute than hospital stay. We do not get paid for swing beds. You have to have a whole program around that. Bay Area Hospital as a DRG hospital, a larger hospital, doesn't get the payments that the critical access hospitals get for swing beds. And so it's mutually beneficial for us to discharge the patients and get them into a swing bed at critical access hospital if they have capacity.
And Lower Umpqua has a swing bed program too.
Yes.
In Victoria.
Yeah. So when we're looking at this, this is broken down for patients that say 0 to 5 days, the first column. So I'm looking at the middle of the group. So less than 5 days, greater than 5 days, greater than 10, greater than 14, greater than 30, greater than 60. So as we look across, those greater than 5 are actually incorporating all those down below. So it's not exclusive. But what I did is we put a comment in here. So you see the charges of those patients that stay less than 5 days are the lion's share of our patients. On average, they stay 2.53 days. $172 million in charges with $71.6 million in actual payments, with our cost being $45 million. So a $26 million margin. Can't see it because we're zoomed in, but this segment, so those that stay less than 5 days, the average margin per patient is $4,745. When we look at those greater than 5 days, which includes everything below, the total is $121 million in charges with only $31 million in payments and almost $37 million in costs. So if a patient stays more than 5 days, cumulatively, we've lost $5.5 million. If we look at those patients that stay 5 to 10 days, the loss is $181 per patient. Those patients that stay 10 to 14 days, the loss is $3,400 per patient. Those patients that stay 14 to 30 days, we're losing $10,300 per patient. Patients that stay 30 to 60 days, it's almost $29,000 loss per patient. And if a patient ends up in the hospital for more than 60 days, which we had 6 of those, a $65,000 loss per patient. So again, that just goes to speak the fact that we get the same payment regardless of how long they're in the facility.
And regardless, we need to keep them until we find an appropriate place for them.
Correct.
These are patients that no one will take.
Well, not that no one will take, we eventually do find that a placement, but sometimes we have very complex patients that do take a lot of time to try and get them to a facility that can take care of them. I do know that there's hospitals, and I'm sure Portland has these, where patients stay in the hospital for years because there is no safe discharge. And so patients end up essentially living in the hospital because they can't discharge the patient because they're not safe to go anywhere but to another facility, and there's nowhere to place the patients. The last slide, I did want to break out one unique component that I could for inpatients, and that's the APU, the Behavioral Health Unit. So as of 6/30 of 24, we had 830 patients for that 12-month period of time. You can see the average length of stay was 8.22 days. Definitely a decline from 2 years ago. 6/30/22, we only had 645 patients for that 12-month period ending, but they stayed on average almost 22 days. Charges, you can see, are about the same. 10.7 million now versus 10.4 million in 22. Payments have gone from 2.6 million in 22 to $3 million. And our direct costs has gone from 4.6 million in 22 to 4.8 million in 24. Our direct margin has improved slightly. We're currently losing $1.7 million for patients staying on the APU. You can see that is down from the $2 million that we lost in 6/30/22. A direct margin of negative 56%. Most of the patients up there are primarily Medicaid and then Medicare.
It does look like our utilization is improved, though. I mean, that unit is supposed to be 7 to 10 days, right? And then transition to a longer
outpatient, hopefully.
Right.
This
Which the state has, mandated sort of, but it hasn't been able to fund it or help develop programs so that those patients can get their care.
This is a great segue for Brian, at least to talk about how working with the legislature and that we actually have some financial respite in sight in terms of these losses in the APU.
Potential.
Right. So we engaged in this room several rounds of community meetings. We have been, as Bay Area Hospital, advocating on every stage and platform. I've made trips to our elected officials in Salem. I've spoken to my colleagues at hospital association meetings. There are only, I believe, 12 inpatient psychiatric programs of the 62 hospitals. 50 of them have already closed these programs or never had these programs and haven't opened these programs. So we are one of very few committed hospitals to this service line, and we see here it is not funded. Medicaid is a significant funder for this group of patients, and so this past year we were really excited to hear that Governor Kotek was commissioning an actuarial study to provide input theoretically before her budget and understand the methodology for reimbursement, the rates for reimbursement for inpatient psychiatric care. During this same time period, the legislature directed $1 billion to behavioral health in the state, a huge commitment. It specifically excluded inpatient behavioral health from $1 billion of funding, saying it's not as important as the rest of the funding. While we saw our outpatient programs compete with staff with 30% increase in wages backed by the state increase in reimbursement, it made it even more difficult to try to save our APU. On that backdrop, it was really encouraging this past year to see this commission an actuarial study by the governor's office. We were one of the few hospitals at the table, and the actuaries went past the numbers to ask us as hospital operators, people taking care of our community members, what's it like? And what are the things in the system of care here in Oregon that make it more expensive to care for patients? And so we got to tell that story about how difficult it is and how long our patients need to stay, our separation from other services, the dedication and commitment to training and supporting our staff for safety. The actuarial report came back, and I think they came up with 4 or 5 different methodologies. We got communication. They were adopting, I think, option 4, which took a graduated approach, and patients who stay longer were going to receive additional payment. It took us a little while to run that analysis. When we looked at our theoretical patient census here, we modeled out an incremental payment of $1.7 million. Literally did a dance in the office because it's like we finally have the funding that we need to keep this program. We then asked our partners here, Advanced Health, what anticipated payment increases can we expect at Bay Area Hospital, and when can we expect them? The communication from the state seemed to indicate that the new rule would be into effect, and so January this year, we could start seeing some of this additional revenue. They came back and said, well, based on the information we have from the state, we're expecting about $165,000 extra dollars to fund your program. That 1.7 million of that 1.1 was tied specifically to Advanced Health. We see patients from other Medicaid programs. Well, that's a big discrepancy and not the excitement that we were hoping. So we shared the communication that we had from the state and said, here's what we received. They're like, well, we haven't seen that at all. They modeled it and came up with about $500,000 and weren't sure when it's going to go into effect. And so somewhere between 100,000 and 1.7 million, we think there's incremental payment coming to us. But late in December, we went from jubilation of finally having this big victory to a big question. And so I think the next step is to request that the Oregon Health Authority and Advanced Health get on a joint call. We look at the communication and we say, how's this going to translate in the real world? What kind of funding are we really going to have to help us take care of our community? Because we really need the 1.7 to make this program, close to break even at just a contribution margin level. So yes, there's additional funding, and then it got really fuzzy as we started to really drill down and confirm that.
So we really need to get all the players in the same room with the numbers, get this settled out.
I thought you were going to tell me a rosier story than that. Thanks.
That's the last slide. So in short, none of these programs are covering the overhead costs at this point. Some are getting very close to covering the overhead costs, which again are not included on these slides. But so there's still work to be done, and continues to be done every day by not only the exec team, but the managers. Everyone is working hard together to try to make the changes needed.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Any questions from the board?